The Jewish community in Johannesburg came together to remember the first anniversary of the Hamas attack against Israel. Events on October 7, 2023 sparked the outbreak of the Israel-Gaza war. Scores of Jewish organizations gathered to remember those who died in the attack and those still being held hostage by Hamas. Hamas gunmen killed about 1,200 people, targeting communities in the south of the country. They took over 250 hostages back to Gaza.
Organizers created an October 7th square in Houghton, Johannesburg. The faces of the hostages still being held captive adorned about 100 trees. Emotions took hold as people moved among the displays. The square featured various sections, highlighting the sexual abuse many suffered and honoring the children who died and are still being held captive.
It was a day that we will always remember. Everybody remembers where you were 9/11. Each one of us remembers where we were on 7 October, and it's something that will always be with us. I think you're going to see members of our community walking around here. You'll see that they've got red eyes. There's been a lot of crying that has happened here. Because we haven't really had a chance to come to terms with what has happened. It's a day our lives changed. You walked down through these trees. There are 101 trees. There are 101 people who are still being held hostage in Gaza. And we keep being asked, what about the ceasefire? Why are you not? Yes, we all want an end to the suffering. We want an end to the suffering in Gaza, and we want an end to the suffering in Israel. But until those hostages have been released, how can there be peace? How can Israel just say, oh, well, leave the hostages there? They can't. They have a responsibility to their citizens to make sure that they come back. And every person here, you'll see the yellow that we wear, you will see our badges. For a year we have prayed for the release of those hostages. Israel has that responsibility, just like I would like to think that South Africa, if God forbid I was kidnapped or hijacked, would want to look after my security and would want to bring me back.
One of the survivors of the October 7 attack, Lotus Lahav, explained how she and her mother managed to get into their safe room in their house at the Neroz kibbutz. There they used a vacuum cleaner and an old rowing oar as a makeshift lock to prevent the door from being opened.
We laid under a table and hugged each other and just waited. All this time we heard non-stopping shootings and grenades and explosions. And we started getting text messages from neighbors and family that lives all around the kibbutz about them begging for help. At first it was, please send help, the terrorists are now in my house. Later it became people that are injured and need someone to help them stop the bleeding so they will not die. Later it became people that have lost connection with other family members or neighbors. And we understood that it is only a matter of few minutes until they will reach our home. And they did. At around 9 a.m. they were in our house. We heard they started by shooting at all of the houses from the outside. We heard cars and motorbikes, and they were shouting commands in Arabic to each other. And then they entered our house.
Fortunately, their makeshift door lock held.
But somehow it worked. They reached to the door and they tried to open, and they were slamming at the door and shouting. And tried and didn't manage to open the door. And at that moment, at the beginning I panicked. But when I realized that those are the final moments, I kind of made a decision that I am not willing to die scared or panic. So I just kind of made peace with death, and we said goodbye words to each other, me and my mother. We were holding hands in the dark under the table, and I told her that I appreciate everything that she's done for me, and that I had a great 22 years until now. And I asked her not to scream when they will open the door. And luckily we didn't have to face this minute, but when they left, there was still, I thought it will be the last time they will be in our house, because I imagined during this entire day that there is probably around 15 terrorists, and they are walking door by door. So if they were here once, they will not return. But I was wrong. We had over 100 terrorists and looters in the kibbutz that day. So they were in our house 5 times.
The 2 women were later rescued.
October 7th is the day in which the most Jews were killed since the end of World War II. It represents an orgy of violence perpetrated against Israelis, but against Jews in general, and it's led to an absolute increase in anti-Semitism across the world. In South Africa, we saw an increase of 613% since in the first 3 months that followed October 7th. So, although obviously it affects Israelis directly, it has also affected international Jewry in a very direct way, and for that reason, it's very important that we come together and we commemorate October the 7th. The following is a tribute to Vivian Silver. She was an intimate friend of some people in our community, and she held a program called Women Wage Peace, which she tried to bring Palestinians and Israelis together for the sake of making peace. Originally it was said that she was taken hostage from Kibbutz Be'eri, but about 2 months after October 7th, it became known to us that she wasn't taken hostage, she was actually burnt alive in her house. This installation represents the hostages that were taken. It was put together by one of our synagogues, Linksfield Shul. It has on each bottle the name of the hostage and a message to them. And the corks in the bottles represent being held down, and then obviously what we hope for will be the release. Here we have Kfir Bibas. He was 9 months old when he was taken hostage. He has been in captivity now for longer than he was free before he was taken hostage. So he's been in captivity for 12 months and he was only 9 months when he was taken. Karina Ariev was taken hostage together with her friends from a military base. There was later a picture released of her in which her face was absolutely bashed and destroyed, in a tower looking absolutely pained. And when we see images like this, our hearts really break, because we know the terrible suffering that our hostages must be going through on a day-to-day basis. So every minute for them must feel like a lifetime. So one of the side effects of the massacre that occurred at the Nova Festival was that hundreds of cars were left strewn across the highway, Route 232, burnt and destroyed. So all of those cars were picked up and taken to a lot, and that became known as a car graveyard. And we brought these cars here to symbolize that, and to symbolize the fact that even afterwards, people from Zaka, which is an organization that found body parts to bury people properly, went through the cars bit by bit to make sure that no extra human bodies could be found, or body parts. They also found that an ambulance was there that had 14 victims inside. It was hit by an RPG. So civilians fleeing the scene were killed in an ambulance. Over here, we have a tree that's been wrapped. One of our community members wrapped a tree every day for 360 days, but a complaint came in from an anti-Israel lobbyist, and the community policing came to say that the ribbon was damaging the health of the tree. So the ribbon was taken down, but we've given her a space here to express what she was expressing for all of those days. So this is from the tree that she had outside her house that has now been transposed to here. As we move around, we have here 2 sukkot, one to represent Kibbutz Be'eri, which is one of the kibbutzim that was most affected. So one of our community organizations put together this kibbutz. It's, as you can see, this kibbutz, the sukkah, as you can see, it has a lot of destruction inside it to symbolize the destruction of the day. It 1 in 4 people from Near Oz were abducted on the day, and they still have a large amount of hostages, I think more than 20. Inside the sukkah, what we have is artwork that you would find generally in a sukkah that children do at play school or at nursery school, and the artwork has been done by Kfir Bebas, the baby that was taken hostage. So, and Ariel Bebas, his brother, who's only 5 years old. So it's a mark of what would happen in a normal situation had these children not been taken hostage. This installation was put together by Kuleinu and the UJW, the Union of Jewish Women. So Kuleinu is an organization that deals with violence against women. And a major aspect of October 7th was the mass raping that occurred. And one of the key images that we got, unfortunately, from October 7th was that of a hostage being taken with her pants bloodied, clearly indicating that she'd been raped. So we've put up those pants, unfortunately now iconic, but we've put up those pants as a mark and as a jarring effect for the rape that's occurred. Our community members have been invited into this space and have been allowed to write messages that speak to the sexual violence that occurred and to the rape that occurred. You can hear, for instance, here see that rape is not an act of resistance, rape is never justifiable, rape is not a weapon of war, me too unless you're a Jew. And that speaks to the fact that people didn't believe that the rape occurred, and that the idea that women should always be listened to was absolutely thrown out of the water as it pertains to the Jews and as it pertains to the Israelis who were mass raped. The UN report on sexual violence hangs here as proof that sexual violence occurred, because unfortunately many South Africans still refuse to believe that rape was used as a weapon of war by Hamas. I have firstly messages about some of the families that were killed, but what we have here is a beautiful canvas which depicts the canopy that was at the Nova Festival with people dancing again. And that ultimately is a message that we wish to put forward, that we are scarred and we are battered, and this was a very, very jarring day for us. But the nation of Israel, Jews around the world, we will dance again.